Hey, everybody. Joshua Campbell here. So, here's the thing. I've been pretty much obsessed with everything cognition, and what that is those things that's happening within the 6 inches between those ears. And so that's all your mental faculties and so on. But more so, how does that relate to sports? Like, what separates then some of the top athletes from the amateurs, or from the ones that are looking to go pro to the amateurs? So I've been doing a bunch of interviews. Had the pleasure to interview Mick Clegg, who was a former strength and development coach at Manchester United back in the day, and interviewed a few other people, one of them being Marco. And I've had some really great conversations. One of them is a friend of mine who I'm going to bring up. He's Juerg. Hey, Shaniza. Hey, Juerg. I think you're there. So let me see if I can invite you to this. And it's always interesting because I know that I haven't been doing this too much, but it's going to be fun. Who Juerg is that he's been a professional athletic coach for the past 30 plus years. He's worked with some of the pros out in Switzerland, out in New Zealand. And hey, Juerg, how's it going, man?
Not too bad.
Thanks for joining. I know that you probably have some family stuff to do. I know it was your wife's birthday yesterday, and you had a long day, and it's what, like 11 o'clock your time now?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but all good. Yeah, it's cool to be speaking with you. So no, all good. Perfect.
Okay, awesome. So I was just telling everybody who's jumping on. So I know a bunch of my friends are all athletes in one regard. So whether they do it out of leisure, or some of them are training, they may be soccer pros. I know that you focus on floorball, and you're gonna have to explain to us what that is exactly. But they really want to know, like, what are some of those things? So before we get into it, like, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Hey, Maddie.
Well, I kind of expected the question about floorball, so as it's not very well known, let's say, in North America, so hence these are the balls. So the ball we use, it's plastic, it is hollow, so super fast, and let's say we use plastic sticks. It's kind of similar to ice hockey, but without the ice, without the skates, and the not as intense body contact or body checks. Yes, but if we have in Europe the World Championships, there's easily sold out crowd, 15, 16,000. So like a proper NBA stadium, NHL stadium. Yeah, so no, that's pretty cool. And I started when I was 12. I've started playing myself, and obviously I haven't stopped playing and coaching. Coaching has started a little bit later. I was 16,
Yep.
and I got my first coaching role there with the boys I coached. They were 14 and 15, so basically my mates. And yeah, I just love it. It's just my passion, and yeah, it's from a stop and go perspective. It's probably the fastest sport which you can find, I assume, or I believe at least. Yeah,
Okay.
hard to say if it's really the fastest or not.
No. So I was just gonna say, first off, that if you could show those plastic balls again, because I've never seen them. I know a lot of my friends are back in the Caribbean somewhere, but like when I moved to Canada, I was like, how are people playing this thing on the ice? Like, why would anybody go skate on the ice for competitive reasons? I just thought that was all leisure. So floorball looks like it's a lot more up my alley because it's in the nice hot sun. And then Stevenson is saying that floorball is speed, agility, and it's spectacular. I'm going to take your word for it. I've never seen a game. After this, I'm definitely going to go and look one up, and I'm sure you can send me some Juerg. So I definitely want to jump into the coaching aspect, because you've been doing this for some time. And I know in our conversation you said, well, after some time, things become a little bit easier because you have the benefit of experience. But what have you seen in the evolution of not only the sport, but you said something really key, is that you were more so interested in the cognitive aspects and the physical aspects rather than just the tactics. And so for people watching this now, they're like, oh, well, we're in 2021, duh, but you've been doing this for a while. So what sparked your interest then, and how have you seen that change to now?
Well, yeah, it's now my 31st season. I'm basically coaching, or we just started about we call it UHC Uster here in Zurich or close to Zurich. New team for me, highest league, men's league, and well, yeah, it's good. What has been the evolution? To be very honest, I think my first 15 years with the knowledge from today, I think, I mean, it was successful, but I probably didn't have a clue what I'm really doing, honestly speaking.
Okay.
I think it helps to mature, to get some life experience, and then, yeah, I just think, yeah, strongly believe that you have, yeah, more experience to reflect and to think about certain things. And yeah, but you're right. Most coaches or head coaches, they're pretty keen on drawing for, I call it hours and hours, any tactical moves. And I'm not quite sure what actually made me more thinking about the fitness and cognitive aspect. So, I mean, the last 10 years, I know why it's cognitive, but before that, I started to study medicine, so maybe coming from that perspective where I thought, okay, maybe something that's my area, but I badly failed, and I'm happy I didn't go that way. So that's all cool. But yeah, so that was kind of interesting. And but I remember in my very first years, when we did some sprints, after the sprinting, we did calculation, like a math calculation in the head. Easy and simple, but
okay.
Nowadays, like 30 years later, they call it neuroathletic, so or neurotraining. But as I said, I didn't have a clue. I think what I was doing. I just thought what might feel right and what was kind of fun and challenging. But
walk us through that then, Juerg. So, like, why did you think that was going to be challenging for somebody through a math problem after they did a sprint?
Well, one thing I clearly can say, I strongly believe, and that was from early years on, that the training should be harder than the game, so or the match / the game, because then you don't want to, in an ideal game situation, you don't want to experience a new situation on the court or on the pitch where you go, whoa, what's happening now? And that's, I think, where in all sports they praise experience. Yes, and we have been in grand finals, we have been in playoffs, and very experienced team. They know how to handle, and so therefore it was kind of thinking, what could we do to challenge the players, to make it more difficult in training or at training than actually during the game.
Gotcha.
And yes, and the longer I basically was into it, and I was kind of lucky or unlucky, depends how you want to see it, but with 23, I think 24, I was coaching in the highest league here in Switzerland, and some players were older than me, and but the higher the level got, you realize, okay, technical players get a similar technical level, they get a similar fitness level, and then let's say the agility in your mind, the perception to realize something becomes more and more important.
So at the higher the level you go, is on the different, all the physical stuff kind of is at the same level. And I think we've heard that time. I know I've definitely heard that. So I used to swim quite a bit. And when you got to really competitive swimmers, like they all have very similar body structure. They all have very similar muscle mass and so on. They're built sort of the same from a physical appearance. But just to echo chamber what you're saying there is that whatever goes on inside the head, inside the body, that's where you're going to get the biggest return.
Yes, exactly. And for me, that was probably, as I said, around 2013, so maybe 8 years ago. I know you had once an interview with Mick Clegg. I never met him personally, but I remember there I was then dealing with the light system, the same one he was dealing with. And then was Paul Scholes at Manchester United. And he was kind of famous as a player, great on the pitch, but he was infamous for being the best or not the best in the fitness training. But he, for example, what I was told, he was training a lot with those light system and probably with the Neurotracker that I think we have in kind of common, probably how we met online about Neurotracker. And so, yeah, I think that's no coincidence. I'm pretty sure. as I said, I'm not a sports scientist or a medical person that could tell you if it's in our genes, if you're really strong in cognition or not. I definitely think it's possible to learn to a certain extent, or to study to improve. But as we say, I mean, from a marathon runner, you never make a sprinter, and probably vice versa. So probably if you're cognitive, rather on the slow end of the scale, you probably know it fastest. Probably.
Probably, right? So what I really loved is that I was having a conversation with some of the guys over at Neurotracker, and for those of you that don't know, that is the program that both Juerg and I really super love in terms of just training your cognitive performance, and we'll get into that. But they were really saying that, hey, when you start to train your mind, whatever your zone of genius is, so that could be any different sport, it could be floorball, it could be swimming, it could be soccer, but you're going to start to open new pathways, and you're going to see things based on your experience. And if you've been a floorball coach for 30 years, like, you're going to see stuff that it wouldn't even dawn on me. I'd be like, what are you talking about, Juerg? And you'd be like, it's right there. And I'd be like, you lost me. What are you talking about? So I just think is that the more that you apply this self-mastery towards a craft, and whether that be in a professional setting, or whether that be in a work setting, or maybe that is in a hobby-like setting that you really love going and doing this, the more you start to open your mind, you're then seeing more possibilities, you're perceiving more information, you start to process it faster, and then some cool magic starts to happen. So I'd love to even just have that as a segue to say, well, have you been using like the Neurotracker program with any of your athletes? And if you can share any of their experiences. I would definitely love to hear about this selfishly, but I'd also love to share it with the group.
Yes, I have been using it, actually not with the current team.
Okay.
Neurotracker just upgraded themselves to the Neurotracker X, and I have just done that recently, the other week or 2 weeks ago. So I haven't transferred all the data yet, and so hence with my new team, I'm kind of waiting. Okay. Oh, we handed out the glasses tonight at training, actually, like the 3D glasses. So waiting to get started. But I had about 3 years ago, was working with a female team, a very young female team in the highest league here in Switzerland with Zug United. And I think I can say there were some players, maybe it sounds a bit harsh, but there was some kind of being blind, sorry to be straightforward here, but I thought they didn't see the easiest ball or the easiest pass 3-4 meters ahead of them. And then we did work again with lights, with the ROX Pro system, and at Neurotracker for the homework, basically. Yeah. And we had about a very small test group of 6 players, and actually 4 of them, they were just skyrocketing suddenly from let's say the performance. They passed or played those balls which they never did before. So I can't exactly tell you, is it the lights, is it Neurotracker, is it the combination?
No, but that's
I personally always believe it's the combination. So yeah, that was kind of really a successful story. Then I had individual athletes in Switzerland on professional level and semi-professional level who just basically bought the license and did some training. So I kind of course I've seen it, but I didn't really coaching them closely in one way. Yep. We had also some ice hockey players who had some concussion issues and still headache. There I know they have been working with it. So it's very, which is in one way is a beauty. That is really kind of, even it's just one program, it's still a kind of broad range where you can apply it. So I personally like it, but sometimes it's difficult to then explain the athletes why you could do with the same thing this and that as well. And so that's sometimes, I think, the challenge for a coach to pick the main reason, maybe a second reason, but I can't say and say, okay, Neurotracker is brilliant for like 10 points, which I'm sure we could come up with. So for me, then it's usually I use it for peripheral vision and decision making. And these 2 main things, which I think they state as well as the 2 key learning outcomes. But I'm sure that there's plenty of things, as you mentioned, with building these new synapses and things like that. So yeah, it's powerful, and yeah, and what I like actually, I have to maybe to add as well with Neurotracker. Like floorball is not a paid sport. So I mean, we all of us coaches and the players, we all work 80 to 100% with whatever our day job is.
Gotcha.
And so in my day job, I'm selling various training goods. They're all a bit kind of strange. If you never have heard from Neurotracker, it might be the same with other products. Anyway, but what I like really is it has some really good scientific studies behind it, and it has some like proven hard facts. Because I think if I would have to do cognitive testing, I think, yeah, I probably would use some light Neurotracker, but it's not really my test, of course. But I think that's really challenging, and sometimes it's still just a gut feeling. Now they got better, or like the example I said before, now the player sees the open and free player and makes this pass. So yeah, I still think with the topic of cognition, we still fight because it's not easy to measure. They go, what is this? Why should I do whatever? Follow some crazy balls. I follow the crazy ball on the soccer pitch or something like that. But yeah, but I assume you hear and see the same.
No, absolutely. I just want to give a shout out to, I see a few of my friends here joining. Hey, Shaniza. Hey, Rocky. Rocky will kick my ass in all of her online virtual workouts for challenge. You may want to go check her out. But just to recap and sort of like hit the refresh for those of you that are just hopping on here with Juerg, who is a professional floorball coach and has been coaching professional teams at the highest level for the past 30 years. So we're really just speaking not on training specifics, but how do you enhance what is that cognitive aspect. And as you may have heard Juerg say, really difficult to measure, because if everybody's brain is unique and different, how do you establish a baseline for that? Can you establish a baseline that's across the board? And then how can you give somebody something that is objective to then improve that, which is sometimes a subjective feeling? So super, super interesting. But I do hear that quite a lot, Juerg, in terms of, oh, well, and we just talk scores for a minute, but like, so a score, for those of you listening, hey, Faye, so a score is what is a composite of your high level, like cognitive functions, or your high level brain functions. So think things like focus, your attention, and that gets broken down into various other things, your peripheral vision, your decision making, how fast you make the decision, and so on. But I find people start at different scores, like with everything. And it's not a matter of where you start necessarily in a number, but just you want to know what your baseline is. And then I've had some individuals that go super far and their speed start to pick up, and then they start to look at other people's speed and compare speed to speed, which is in a competitive sense, great, because everybody's then working to get better. But sometimes can be a really, really disheartening, because all of a sudden you're looking at a number, let's say the number is 6, and then you may be at a 3 or a 4, and you're like, well, what's the difference? What's going on? And it's really at that point just down to the individual, but more so, where did you start and where are you now? So what is that improvement factor? Because if you started at 0.1 and you're now at 2, that's huge. Or yes, you're not at 1 yet, but you didn't start at 1, right? So like it all depends on where you are. And are you doing 2 balls? Are you doing 4? Which session mode are you doing? And there's just so many things there that I always tell people, look at your rate of improvement. And I get that question quite a lot that you mentioned there, Juerg, in terms of, well, how do we quantify this? How do we see this? And some of it is anecdotal in terms of they're going to have their own personal player experience. And that's where I find that Neurotracker really stands out for me as one of those tools, because they have a lot of research behind it. So there are numerous studies and there's always more research coming out. So it's kind of hard to stay on top of all of it. But from the ones that I've seen, and especially the coaches, and you talk to veterans in the industry like yourself, like Nick Clegg, and like Daryl at the Neurotracker team, and he's just talked with all sorts of people, like the fighter pilots that have 30% increase in their flight paths and so on. And it's like, What? You mean when people are actively shooting at you in simulations that and those are considered probably some of the highest stress environments, right? So then you take it to a sports game where it's still super high stress because you have all the fans cheering you on, and if you don't win the game, like you're not gonna have some happy fans. And then you can shift that into your own personal life. So maybe it is you want better decision making in your office. Maybe you're a corporate exec and you listen to conversations all day long. Maybe it is that you're a student and you want to have a little bit more attention in the classroom, or turn off some of the distractions because everything's online now, right? So like there's just so many applications. And but yeah, so thank you so much for sharing some of your experience. And then
you're welcome.
Go ahead.
Yes, sorry, just the word distraction which you mentioned. I think for me it's still kind of mind blowing with Neurotracker if people have to do it in a noisy environment or within a group. I mean, still the same program, maybe the same speed. Who cares about the speed? But and suddenly, kind of nothing works anymore because your ears are hearing things, you're listening, and your brain is using other data freeways or whatever you want to name it, and suddenly everything drops within a kind of split second, and you go. Because you realize it, you got the wrong balls, like when you mark them, obviously, and then it makes you even more crazy, and you're getting worse and worse, and that's why I really like the idea with the distraction. That's maybe then the better word than what you use now than when I used in the beginning the word challenge for my players. I want to distract them that they have to focus, of course, during the proper session or the training, the games. And yeah, so that's really when you said distraction, really came up my mind. Like I've seen that and myself as well, like experienced myself and going, wow.
Totally. So I personally done over close to 300 sessions now, and I started just doing them seated, then standing, and I saw this guy Rob, and he runs a brain room out in Australia. And he's just fully eccentric. Like he's on a balance ball, balancing, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And I was like, what the hell? But every layer of complexity just makes it that much more challenging. And just to, again, echo what you're saying. I was talking to one of the other coaches, and he's out in Texas, but he coaches MMA fighters. So different sport. But I don't think every sport is competitive. But if I have a punch coming at my face, like I want to be aware of that to be able to, because I don't want to get hit, right? But when you look at the need for attention, he was saying that your attention is really, you only have so much of it, so it's really where you're giving it. And I like to use the example of like when you have headphones on, and you're blasting the music, you can't hear the subtleties in the tones. So you're hearing everything as a collective, but if you were to take out the treble, if you were to take out the bass, you'd probably just hear the vocal at that point. Or vice versa, if you took out the voice and you took out the bass, and you'd only hear the treble, and different tones are going to stand up at different points. So it's fascinating to me, not only when you add distraction, but when you add different frequencies, or if you add different tones or different scents. And that's going to be all different per individual, that you see things either step up or they may not get up as high. And I just saw Marco jump on. So Marco's out in Mississauga, not Mississauga, but in the Ontario area, and he's another sports trainer. So he and their box out team do great stuff. So that's super, super cool.
Yeah, no, I think the senses is very interesting, and in my sport, there's a fair bit of body contact. I think sometimes we kind of still forget to use the tactile sense. So yeah, some has realized it's not just everything about acoustic or auditive input or signals. The visual is pretty important, because most ball sports, I say 98% is probably visual input, because at least on professional, there's too many, not during COVID-19, but usually there's too noisy with too many people. So it's always funny when you see the coach yelling out at the sideline and thinking, yeah, whatever wide receiver like 200 k's away can hear him. So yeah, good luck on that. But yeah, so that is really something I find interesting. But I also if I may share, for me, the weirdest thing in my 31 years of coaching, which I do not understand or have to laugh, is when we do sprint drills, for example. It's not necessarily cognitive, but the input is many coaches blow the whistle to start a drill. And in the most sports I know, if the whistle is occurring and you hear it, it means stop. So why the heck, do you use the stop signal from a match or from a game as the starting signal at training? I do not understand that. And that's where I really, in that kind, I like most as a starting signal, visual input, tactile input, and from time to time, auditive input. And yeah, but I'm not sure if I'm kind of alone with that opinion, but
no,
honestly, I don't get it. Honestly, I don't get it.
No, so like it causes you to stop. So, right. So I remember, so again, I'm no professional soccer player at all, but I played a few games for like pickup or scrimmage here and there. And whenever the whistle is blown, your almost immediate reaction is, hey, the play is halted. So whether that's to start the play or to stop, so you find that like small delay. So I can imagine at super, super high levels, I don't know what some of the tips or tricks are, but I'm sure that you have some in terms of just like you mentioned, changing some of the cues, because every second counts. I mean, if you're going to have a half second in swimming, a half second is a huge distance. And just like in soccer or floorball, if you're a half second to move off the line, well, the ball's already gone. Like you've missed it completely. In ice hockey, like you don't watch the puck for half a second and it's like done 3 laps around the ice, because it just moves that fast. So who knows? But there's just so much there. But Juerg, I know it's super late by you. I do want to respect your time, but I've actually absolutely loved the conversation. Thank you for sharing some expertise. And for the, so who are the types of, before we hop off, who are the types of athletes that if they're looking to up their game, is it just floorball athletes that you work with, or do you work with other types of athletes as well?
With athletes directly, it's 99% is floorball players. But through my day job, I have a lot of contact and exchange with medical staff, fitness coaches, strength and conditioning, rehab coaches from our highest soccer and ice hockey league here in Switzerland.
Okay.
But that's a more recovery topic. A lot of individual mountain bikers, triathletes, and running. So it's kind of broad range. But let's say the cognitive topic is mainly with floorball, where I don't have to convince myself to use it or to apply it. So whereas sometimes with, let's say the higher my experience here in Switzerland, the higher the league. Mm-hmm. And the more professional they are in one way, that they have to kind of 24/7 time to do something, the more hesitant I think they are to a certain extent to add something new in the way of, they don't want to walk to the team and say, hey guys, let's try this or that. Whereas even if a kind of high performance, 2-3 times a week training or 4 times a week training, but they still follow a day job. Mm-hmm. I think they're rather looking for, is there operation for a quick fix? What can I do that I kind of skyrocketing my performance within no time, which I believe doesn't exist. But so yeah, that's just one thing. And the older the sport, like soccer and ice hockey, the more, I don't want to say stubborn, but it goes sometimes towards stubborn. They do it how they've done it all the time. Whereas new sports, and floorball is only 30 years old, so new sports is pretty. I experience them more open for new things, and but I had the chance by now 5 years ago to be at the NBA Toronto Raptors training site, mm-hmm. And I mean, when I compare, I've been to all the big clubs here in Switzerland. If I compare that training facility, what we have over here, then what we have here is just 20 years behind. And so I think it's just a question of time. For me, my perception over here, American football is probably the most highly specialized sport, I assume. They have specialists for anything and everything. At least that's what we get here out of media, or if you read a little bit. As I said, I don't know too much about it, but so yeah, and I think this trend to personalize team training, to have specialists for every topic, to pay basically attention to 7,000 different topics. I think, honestly, I believe it's just swapping into Europe. And there's some kind of, in a positive way, crazy people like Mick Clegg who already realized this, I don't know, 20 years ago. And I don't want to compare myself, not at all, with him. I mean, what he has done with Man U is completely different level. So, but I'm sure he had some people he had to convince which didn't believe him in the beginning. And yeah, it takes some time. Like, a country wasn't built in one day, so it will take some time. But I'm staying positive, and I can see there's more and more. Just yesterday, maybe last thing, I was with DD Robotech. I'm sure you would love it. It's a what's that word in English? It's a leg press,
Yeah.
but it has a kind of hydraulic steering, and you basically get a big screen, and then you have like to follow a line, and you have to push with your left and right leg, and be that precise movement that you actually can follow that line which goes up and down. So you have to do eccentric and concentric moves, and it's all playful. And it's cognitive because you have to see what's coming, and you can play games. You have to jump away from marbles which are coming your way, but everything you do on the leg press. So I think there's more and more ideas, more and more companies, coming on the market with kind of just brilliant ideas from my perspective. And let's see where the journey will take us.
Sweet. And I know you said something there in terms of you don't want to compare yourself to Mick Clegg, so comparison is the thief of joy. But like, soccer's been around for a whole long time, and what you've done with floorball to date, as I said, I'm not super familiar with the sport outside of some of you've been saying to me, but you've already started to affect a lot of that change. You've been working with teams at the highest level, so more of it is coming for sure. And so if any of you watching this now, watching this on the replay, we post it on my Instagram, TV, wherever these stuff gets saved. And then if you want to reach out to Juerg, you can find him at X-Motus, and I'll tag him in the caption there as well. So you can find him there, and then he has a website on his profile. So again, he is in Europe. So if you're here and you want to take the plane over to go and see what floorball is like, I'm sure he will say, yeah, come on in.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, but actually in July 2022, the World Games will be in Birmingham, Alabama, in July 2022, and floorball will be there.
Dude, if you're across the border, we have to connect then.
I will, very likely I will be there. If COVID-19 is by then finally finished,
yep.
The likelihood is pretty big that I'm going to be there, yep.
Okay. So we'll definitely meet when closer to that time. I'm excited to set that up. Okay, cool.
No worries, cool, man. Awesome.
Well, so I know it's getting late, but so thank you very much, Juerg.
You're welcome.
I enjoyed it. Everybody here, I saw some of the comments. We have a big Raptors fan and everything. So that again, everybody here is Joshua signing off. This is Juerg. Juerg is out of Switzerland. Go show him some love, and then send him a message if you have any questions. Take care for now.
Cool. Thanks, Joshua. Bye-bye.
Bye.